We're recording.
Okay.
Thank you, Julia.
How many people have signed up or are in the queue?
We have 23 attendees.
Oh, good. Okay.
And I made Jeff and Chrissy a co-host so they can share their screen.
Are we live?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an informational meeting concerning the reclassification of Plymouth, Kingston, and Duxbury Bays. DMF's Julia Kaplan is going to be the moderator for this meeting. We'll do it like we do our normal public hearings, where we'll ask folks to raise their hand to either ask a question or make a comment. This system has been working out pretty well, so I hope we can get through it tonight in similar fashion. Tonight, we're holding this meeting to inform stakeholders about the process and the outcome of reclassifying the 3-bay area. I know it's been on the minds of a lot of the oyster farmers over the last half a year when this first came up. Shellfish program leader Jeff Kennedy has made this a top priority for the program, working with his staff, Tom Shields, Chrissy Pettypass, Greg Sawyer, Greg Betancourt, and others. We've been working on this literally for months. We've also had substantial technical assistance from the Department of Environmental Protection staff, who have been schooling us on the jargon about wastewater treatment plants and the technical aspects of wastewater treatment plants, and you'll learn more why that's important. Last Friday, at the close of business, DMF submitted documents to the FDA informing them about our determinations of what shellfish growing areas needed to be reclassified and which did not. And this has to do with complying with the model ordinance. And those classifications will be done imminently as DMF works out the details of what's called conditional area management plans, which are essentially state-town cooperative agreements to do certain things under certain conditions. I just want to say I'm really proud of the work that the DMF shellfish team has done on this issue. It's a complicated issue. It's something that Jeff, when he took over the program last June, it's been a top priority for us. It's been a real challenge for all of us. Myself as the new director, Jeff as the new program manager, but we've really done a lot of great work, cooperative work among the staff, but also among agencies. So let me just say, I really want to credit the team for being innovative, persistent, and collaborative. So now I'm going to turn this over to Jeff for his technical presentation, and then we'll take questions when he's done. There aren't too many slides, but I think you'll benefit from seeing some of the details. So Jeff, why don't you begin the PowerPoint?
Thanks, Dan. A lot of these slides you will have seen before from our previous FAQ. This all began in June 2018 with a FDA dye study of the Plymouth wastewater treatment plant. In January of 2020, FDA provided DMF with an executive summary and the final recommendations, what they recommended for the reclassification of the 3-bay system. In the NSSP, the guidance states that there needs to be a mandatory closed safety zone around wastewater treatment plants, and it needs to go out to 1,000 to 1 dilution line from the outfall. The conditional area beyond that needs to go out to 100,000 to 1 dilution line, which is a sizable area, as you can imagine. This was what it looked like, the classification scheme back in June 2018 at the time of the dye study. Most of inside Long Beach was prohibited with an area called the Triangle that was a rec area, and that was still classified as straight approved. All of North Plymouth Harbor and Kingston Bay was approved. Duxbury Bay is approved, and there remains an area in there in Kingston that's a rainfall seasonal area. So this is what it looked like back in January. We had closed the triangle by then, but everything had remained the same. So this is the FDA recommendation for the reclassification scheme. So they had recommended, they broke it up into two areas, essentially conditional approved A area, and then a second area, conditionally approved B area. The B area is essentially northern Duxbury Bay, north of Clark's Island. And as you can see, the conditionally approved A area also goes out into Plymouth Bay, outside the Long Beach and Saquesh Neck, and inside the Gurnet. Those conditional areas would be based on conditions, wastewater treatment plant performance. And this you've seen before this slide, and they listed under what conditions, what they believed when the area should close. So anytime there was a raw sewage discharge, there should be, of any volume, there should be a closure of both area A and area B. And then if it was less than 200,000 gallons, and a settling basin, or excuse me, single batch release settling issue or a loss of disinfection, area A would close, area B could remain open. Otherwise, both areas would close. That was the recommendation. Why should we be following these recommendations? Well, certainly public health protection is the primary reason, but Massachusetts is a signatory to the ISSC. Both DMF and DPH have adopted NSSP model ordinance by reference into our regulations. So we're required to comply with the model ordinance. And we certainly want to avoid non-compliance. Being cited in non-compliance, Massachusetts could be prevented from exporting any product interstate. We really don't want to go there. So what's been done in the last few months? We've analyzed raw data for in-house analysis. So we got the raw data from FDA, and we looked at it and we analyzed it. We've evaluated the Plymouth wastewater treatment plant, done an update to our evaluation. We've used a GIS tool for volumetric calculations to set the 1,000 to 1 and the 100,000 to 1 to see if our calculations agree with FDA's. We've been weekly trying to get out there and or every other week do some fecal coliform testing of the influent to the plant, a flow that's within the plant that's gone through primary and secondary treatment, but pre-disinfection. And we've analyzed the effluent as well. And we've done that for both fecal coliform and male-specific coliphage, which is a virus indicator. And we've met multiple times with the town and plant operators. We've met with DEP almost weekly, and we've had 4, 5, 6 meetings with FDA in that time frame. This is the new classification map and how it will look. The blue hatched is the conditional areas, and the red is still prohibited, and green is straight approved. So you can see that we've expanded the prohibited area behind Long Beach, and it goes a little bit out into the channel now. The conditional area runs from, I believe it's Eagle Point, across to the northern end of Clark's Island, and then down to Saquesh. And then we have a conditionally approved area outside the mouth, inside the Gurnet. So this is zooming in on the parts. You can see the location of the wastewater treatment plant is the triangle right next to CCB 42.1. And that's the outfall location is really on the more the northern third of Plymouth Harbor. And it follows generally effluent, even at high tide, it generally follows the channels. going out, but certainly on the ebb tide, it's a very channelized system, and effluent will go straight out. Hopefully, on the ebb tide will go straight out the mouth. On the flood tide, it will back up and it'll head into southern Duxbury Bay as well as into Kingston Bay. So how was our determination made? The town and the plant have made operational changes at the treatment plant. The treatment plant has a new operator. The town has contracted with a new operator beginning last September, and so they're new to the plant, but they've analyzed the operations and made several significant changes to the operations, which are very beneficial to our classification scheme. We've done our plant evaluation of those changes and the current operations at the plant. We've reviewed our years of water quality monitoring that we've taken, as well as the sanitary survey reports we produce. We've used DEP plant evaluation as well. We've looked at wastewater treatment plant data for the last 5 years, 2016 through 2020, and analyzed it, looking for correlations in the data between chlorine residual and fecal coliform counts, TSS influent and TSS going out, that's total suspended solids. We've looked at trying to find correlation in chlorine residuals, flow rates, influent flow rates, as well as effluent flow rates, to see if there's any relationship with elevated fecal counts. Of course, the highest count that this plant has measured in 5 years was 119, so that's very low. We have looked at the influent pre-disinfection and effluent fecal and MSC testing, and we've used FDA's linear regression formula for the dilution versus distance. We have substituted one batch release, assuming a maximum of 400,000 gallons from one batch, and we've substituted the actual pre-disinfection values, 170,000 fecal coliform, not the assumed, the program assumed 1.4 times 10 to the 6 fecal coliform. So it's quite a different value. And those lower values give us a reduced conditional area. So our determination, Plymouth Harbor, inside of Long Beach, the prohibited zone was expanded to include all waters to the northern end of Long Beach, as well as a portion north into the main channel. Plymouth Harbor North is going to be reclassified to conditionally approved. All of Kingston Bay reclassified to conditionally approved based on the wastewater treatment plant. The area that is seasonal and classified as rainfall will retain that condition as well. And then we're calling it Duxbury Bay South, has been reclassified to conditionally approved. So our conditions here, our wastewater treatment plant operations, there are going to be automatic closures in the release of raw sewage. So if the plant were to suffer a massive failure and release raw sewage, there would be an automatic closure. Fecal coliform grab samples that are greater than 400 would institute an automatic closure. These other conditions are for notification to DMF. So DMF would be notified, and we would make an assessment whether or not an area closure was necessary. We would employ a dilution calculation to determine how big an area would need to be closed. Anytime fecal coliform sample was above 28, 28 is the standard, is the permit standard. If there was a total suspended solid grab sample exceedance, so if that was over the limit for the permit, that would be a notification to DMF. If the outfall pumps, the pumps that actually pump the effluent from the treatment plant out to the ocean, to the Plymouth Harbor, if there was a complete or a partial loss of disinfection, we would need to be notified, and we would make a determination if a closure was needed. The outfall pumps are not always active. Sometimes the pumps, the next bullet, they can be interlocked. If an interlock occurs where one of the automated monitors in the tanks detect a problem with either too heavy solids remaining in the effluent, or if the chlorine residual was too low or too high, the system, the control system, will actually turn off or lock out those outfall pumps, so they can't pump out, and the effluent would be diverted at that point. They would just flow naturally to the groundwater discharge that Plymouth has. So if an interlock occurs, we need to be notified. We need to be find out what time the interlock started, if it had stopped, or if the event was still ongoing. If the outfall pumps were in fact active at the time, we need to be provided a volume so we can do an assessment. So of course, same options for the future. The plant is planning on, they're conducting a feasibility study, and they're providing data to DEP in order to try to switch the outfall and get a permit for all their effluent to go to groundwater discharges. The Plymouth plant is a unique plant in that it has 5 sand basins that they can discharge to instead of the outfall. And by discharging to groundwater, then we totally avoid any of the problems. So I hope that's coming. I know they're studying it, but this is a unique plant. Most coastal plants don't have this ability for a groundwater discharge, an alternate disposal site. So this is very positive, and it's something that's unique, I think, in Massachusetts to Plymouth, to have the 2 options. And then of course, there's still the options that there could be a possibility that growers could move their product to approved areas and participate in the European market. Of course, that's the concern, and that's why you're here, is under normal circumstances, there will be no change in what you can do. Your product is still approved area. It's only the restriction that the European Union will only accept product from straight approved areas, not from conditionally approved areas. So these are not closures; these are just reclassifications. But it gives you an idea of what we're thinking. So I think at this point, Julia, we can open it up to questions, and we can dive into this even more thorough.
That sounds good. So if any attendees have any questions, you can hit the raise hand button, which will create a queue, and I'll be able to call on you. Scott Soares, you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Jeff. Great presentation. I'm curious on the number of growers that were impacted and/or the volume of shellfish based on historical landing data of how many growers stand to be impacted by the redesign and the plan.
Chrissy, do you have that number?
There are 33 growers that are going to have their sites reclassified from approved to conditionally approved. In terms of volume, there's no way for us to know because it's not going to impact their current volume. It's only going to impact their ability to expand into the European market. Unless there are closures due to, treatment plant failures, which we're not anticipating, and really it would be the same. It doesn't change from what's been happening in the recent years. If there was a failure, it still would have.
Sorry to interrupt, but due respect, I just like to get a handle on what percentage of Massachusetts landings we're looking at as being affected by this, if those growers did decide to harvest and sell to the EU, if and when that opened up. And those numbers you do have.
I don't have it offhand right now, but
okay.
We can get that to you.
Okay, that'd be great. Follow-up question, Jeff, and this would be kind of a general question to the division as well. Given those very unique characteristics that you described about this wastewater treatment plant, and the possibility, I guess, in the future of some additional changes coming, is there any appetite to going back to the ISSC to look at, working with the division and the industry to try to change the language that was originally put in that would get at, I don't want to say exemptions, but at least looking at conditions that might move those lines a little bit further back so that we don't have so many growers impacted by these reclassifications?
Well, I think let's parse that a little bit. There's making changes to the ISSC, to the NSSP through the ISSC that would be advantageous to this classification scheme. But another way to approach it would be if there are changes in the operations. Whether we can refine our data. We're going to continue to sample fecal coliform and MSC at the plant. The numbers are MSC is very, very low. We found a couple of elevated counts in our testing, but FDA found all less than the level of detection. So the plant is a high performing plant. It's we believe that and that's how we came at this and was able to reduce it from a total day of discharge, 1.7 MGD, to just one single batch, which is 400,000 as a max. So it's whether or not we can use new data to put into our linear regression to shrink the area a little bit. So there's a couple of approaches we can make. And certainly, if they were to switch to a groundwater discharge, that would drastically impact this classification scheme. I could see a lot of the conditional areas going away, and probably the prohibited area would shrink drastically.
Okay, next we have Khalil. Khalil, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Julia. Appreciate it. Khalil Bogdan from MFAC. Very interesting. And I have a question regarding, I understand we have the conditionally approved areas and then we have the verticals, which are approved. And if for some reason we've got growers growing their oysters in these areas, and they're getting near harvest time and close to harvest time, and then we have to shut them down because of the outflow from the plant. I'm curious, is all lost with those growers, or once the plant gets back under control and the area then becomes conditionally approved, is all lost, or are those oysters able to purge themselves of any toxins that might have been in the water?
Yes, they are able to purge themselves. It would be what the program recommends is a 21-day closure, and you can do some testing to get you out of that 21 days to shorten it up a bit. But generally, it takes 3 weeks after say a raw discharge from a wastewater treatment plant for the shellfish to naturally purge themselves. So they would be fine after a period of time, but that could be even shorter. It could be as little as a week.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Certainly.
Elaine, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Hi, Elaine Fiore. I happen to be a sewer commissioner in Kingston. So I'm quite interested in the operation in Plymouth. If they have 5 sand basins available, why isn't that the primary discharge? Why is it still going into the bay? Because that would appear to eliminate this whole process with conditional and approved and not affect 33 growers.
So I'm going to ask a favor. I see John Hobel is on the call. If John, would you mind answering that?
John, you can unmute yourself.
There we go. I think I got it. Yeah, hi, Elaine.
Hi, John.
How you doing? Anyway, yes. When the plant went through MEPA 20 plus years ago,
Yep.
I was concerned about the Eel River system, and it was decided they limited the amount of discharge to the Eel River, because those beds flow into the Eel River eventually. We've been working with Plymouth, and they've been doing an analysis on the nutrient loading, and a lot of good things have happened since then, including the optimization of the plant. They were averaging about 7.5 total nitrogen, and now they're averaging about 5 just since the new operators took over. And they have hit 3. I know the Falmouth SBRs hitting 3 on a general basis. So also the Pine Hills, as the nutrient loading in the river from the Pine Hills, will all be going to the wastewater treatment plant. We're going to have a mixed septic and wastewater system. So that discharge, from the septic systems won't be entering the Eel River system. So we've been working with Plymouth and JB to revise their permit. It's a long process. We have to go back through MEPA again because of the amount that needs to be improved, needs to be sent to the beds. And then they've already done the hydraulic evaluation, and the hydraulics say that it can take 3 million gallons a day, which is what the plant is designed for, but they haven't built out to. They're averaging about 1.7. So that's where we're working on it right now. So it's going to be a fairly long process. We're working with them on the nutrient loading aspect. They're doing the modeling of that, and then hopefully go back to MEPA and then do the permitting process again.
Okay, from a
Thanks, John.
DEP, if I could, a couple of follow-up questions?
Certainly.
Okay, from a DEP perspective, what would you consider a long process? 5 years, 10 years?
No, probably a couple.
A couple of
It
years?
depends on how fast we can get the nutrient loading analysis done and file again with MEPA.
Okay.
And then so we got to go through MEPA, then we got to go through the permitting process, which should be fairly quick. But we have to get the nutrient loading into MEPA again and get that. It'll probably need an EIR, and that takes a little bit longer than just an ENF. So it depends upon how fast we can get moving on the nutrient loading. That looks reasonable. We'll take a look at it before it goes to MEPA, obviously, and take a look at it. But it's based on the numbers and based upon if they can keep the plant operating, and they should be able to keep the plant operating at about 5. We may actually lower the permit to 5 if that's within the realm of possibilities too. To deal with the nutrient loading. So quite a few moving parts here on that, but that would be the, and the ocean outfall, just because of the way things work, I don't see them ever giving that up, but, it's just that, they never get it again, and they just need to keep it. They probably have no discharge reports to the EPA if we can get them all to use the upland beds and go from there.
Okay, thanks, John. And just back to a couple of other questions. If let's say, I'll say within 3 years, it sounds like this issue would probably be resolved by using the sand basins. And the levels have gone down from 7.5 already to 5, and sometimes it's hitting 3. Can this be put on standby for the next couple of years and not put 33 growers out of any business opportunities with the European market? It's the conversation has been, the European market, but we all know that with today's economy, any customer that you lose is money. And to put 33 growers on a conditional basis because of Plymouth's wastewater treatment plant, some considerations could be given, since it sounds like the focus and the primary goal is to get Plymouth using the sand basins.
Yeah, as far as any delays in this, no. This is the dye study was conducted in June of 2018, practically 3 years ago. This is just one treatment plant in one area that is under the radar here in Massachusetts. But really, any wastewater treatment plant needs to have similar adjustments done. So whether it's Cohasset, Situate, Marshfield, Mattapoisett, it's up and down the coast. We have to deal with these same issues, and they're not going to go away. And this keeps us in compliance with the NSSP. And so we're going to move ahead with this this week.
Well, is there any consideration being given to the growers that are affected by this?
Well, certainly every step, one of the reasons why this is taken is the amount of time it's taken is because we are very concerned about the impacts on the growers and trying to limit those impacts. I think we took a very unique and innovative approach here. We've worked with the town and with the plant operators, with DEP, as we never have before. So just to limit the size of this conditional area, and I think we've done a good job of restricting it to just this area. Hopefully, I think the future we can shrink it even further. But this is our best effort.
Okay, thank you.
John, did you have any additional questions, or were you just raising your hand?
I was just going to respond to Elaine's question. So I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Dave Tarantino. Dave, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting. I just think it would have been helpful to have a representative of Plymouth Town government on this call. I know it's not their call, but I think they need to be made very much aware of the situation. I think it would be helpful. I myself was a selectman in Plymouth for 15 years, and I'm not so sure that they are aware of the impact that they are making on a very important fishery. I was instrumental in beginning the oyster fishery, and I'm disappointed that they haven't moved faster to move to inland disposal. I think that Eel River is a red herring, and I wish there was a representative of Plymouth on this call. That's all.
Thank you. I know that this invite went out to officials in all three towns, but I have to say that we have had multiple meetings with the town officials, with the town administrator to the constables. It's their DPW superintendent. And it's
my remarks weren't in any way meant as a criticism of your actions. I think they've been wonderful. It's just that I'm
just trying to say that
it's done. You need people to know what's going on.
And I'm trying to say that we've met with them. They know exactly what's going on. They've been very cooperative, extremely cooperative and helpful. And so I can't sing the praises of the town enough, that they have worked hard with us and made changes. And I've been in shellfish for 38 years, and I've never seen this level of cooperation.
That's encouraging. Thank you.
Next we have John. Again, John, you can unmute yourself.
Just a comment. I know that Melissa and selectmen take this as a high priority. Melissa Riggi, the town manager, as does John Beater, the DPW commissioner. So they want to be good neighbors. They know that this impacts, the neighborhood of the Bay system. I just want to say that as much as we disagree with the nutrient loading of the Eel River, we've had 2 permit appeals, even on the volume that's allowed right now from the Eel River Watershed Association. And we've had to go through those appeals. We've won those appeals, but we know that increasing the volume and therefore the load of the discharge will create a lot more issues with them. And again, it was a lot of their comments during the MEPA process 20 years ago that caused this. We believe that the concern that they have, is not really the most valid, but we have to work our way through the process. So just to kind of let you know that, yeah, as much as technically we believe that they're wrong, unfortunately, it's not unfortunate, but the permit process allows these sort of actions that they can take to slow down and stop the permit process in some ways.
Thanks, John.
Next, we have Matthew. Matthew, you can unmute yourself. Matthew, you can unmute yourself. It doesn't seem like we're getting him. Jeff, I don't have any other hands raised. Oh,
Can you hear? I'm sorry, here I am. Sorry, I hit
Yep.
the wrong button.
yeah.
Yeah, this is Matt Muratori, State Rep for Plymouth. I just want to reassure Mr. Tarantino that, yes, as was said, the town has been really taking this seriously. I've been working with them. I know they have as well. And, it's everyone has said, it's unfortunate, but yeah, they really have been working on it. And it is it's a number one priority for them.
Thank you.
Jeff, if I could add, while the questions have been going on, I looked into the 2019 dealer reported data for those 35 growers that are going to be impacted. And this is a quick estimate. I just kind of did it on the fly, but it should be pretty accurate. We have 2.75 million pieces marketed in 2019 from those 33 growers with a value of 1.45 million.
Thanks, Chrissy.
You're welcome.
And Chrissy, for what year was that?
2019. We don't have the QC 2020 data, and it wouldn't be representative anyway.
Right. And do we have a ballpark for 2019 number of million pieces?
So that is 2019. The million for 2019, it was 2.75 for those 30.
What's the state total?
Oh, the state total. Yes, sorry.
Sorry.
Give me a minute on that.
Jeff, while Chrissy does that, do you want to take another question?
Please.
Okay, next we have Joseph. Joseph, you can unmute yourself. Joseph, you can, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's the timeline for the new MOUs for these areas?
So Greg and I were talking about that today. The camps, the conditional area management plans, they'll take a little bit longer, but we'll get a draft out to you and to Jake and to Chad in the next. I hope the next week, and the MOUs probably at the same time. We're going to use a generic MOU that will cover not only these conditional areas, but also any mooring areas and any rainfall as well. So we hope by making it a simpler MOU that it will be reviewed by the towns quicker and get approval. But of course, it has to be, there will be an MOU with Plymouth. There will be and including the treatment plant. There'll be an MOU with Kingston. There will be an MOU with Duxbury as well. So those are separate MOUs, and it's actually a single conditional area management plan. But yeah, it will take a little bit of time to get those approved. Regardless, we're going to move ahead with a reclassification of these areas this week.
So they are, the existing MOUs, like we have a conditional area for rainfall. That's going to remain standalone, and this will be a separate, more
Right.
encompassing one.
Right. So in order to speed this along, I think it's probably easier if we develop a separate conditional area management plan. And so I think at some point in the future, we'll merge those two with Kingston. But I think for now, just so that we don't mess with the rainfall area, we'll leave that alone, and we'll just create another camp that will be for wastewater treatment plant performance.
Okay. Simple is better.
And
Thanks,
Jeff,
Joe.
to get back to your question, in 2019, the state total was over 52 million pieces with a value of over 29 million.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know Scott is writing that down.
And next we have Jamie. Jamie, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, guys. I commend you on all your hard work. It looks very complicated. My question actually goes to that. So as I raised my hand and commented at the last Zoom conference that you guys held about a month and a half ago, I asked you guys to turn your attention to Situate and explain whether, given that, do you guys now have like a blueprint that will hasten this process? I understand that from inception to completion, this process has taken about 3.5 years. I learned today that the applicants, so we're in the process of trying to begin an aquaculture program in Outer Cohasset Harbor, as you guys are well aware. 9 applicants applied for to the Board of Selectmen in town back in April, and then we were sued by a group of folks. We were just, we were told that our applications are going to be rejected by the town in an effort to remove us from the lawsuit. Now the Board of Selectmen will turn their attention towards placing farms from the mean low tide out in state waters that cannot be, well, as far as I know, can't really be fought over. So I understand our next hurdle will be to test Outer Cohasset Harbor as well as the North and South rivers, and find out whether whether farms that we place out there will need to be moved so that they're outside of the 1,000 to 1 dilution area. Is this going to be a 3.5-year process in Situate, or have you guys learned so much that you think you might be able to condense this all?
Great questions. As far as applying this template to Cohasset, we have learned some lessons here, but unfortunately, I don't think the treatment plants are quite different. Certainly, Cohasset is much smaller. I believe it's 350 MGD. No, excuse me, 350,000 gallons a day. So it's a much smaller plant. I don't believe there's any storage capacity. So it's going to make, and of course, Cohasset Harbor is very shallow. So the 1,000 to 1, the closed safety zone is going to be pretty large in there. But I can guarantee you we need to have an answer for FDA, because it is number 2 or number 3 on their list. I would think by July we will have a determination for you.
By July, you guys will have completed a dye study and have studied the results and have an answer, you're saying?
We'll use a straight dilution calculation. We're not going to do a dye study there.
Okay.
That would just slow things down, and I'm not sure it would give us any better answer than a simple dilution calculation. We do, if possible, we'll run a computer model on it, a sophisticated model that SMAST has perfected. But yeah, I'm not sure we'll have the time to do that or have funding in time. But
Okay.
that's our new approach is rather than die studies, let's try to model this.
Now, is this a recent determination or eureka moment? I only ask because I had a conversation with the chairwoman of our Shellfish Advisory Committee about 2 weeks ago, prior to the first shellfish meeting that we held in like a year. And she told me that from what she heard, the DMF and FDA were scheduling a dilution test for Outer Cohasset and Scituate and North and South Rivers for June. Then the meeting was held and Mike DeMeo, our shellfish constable, sorry to cut you off, said that it's not scheduled for June, but come June, the DMF and FDA are turning their attention to Scituate. So this is basically a third option that I'm hearing now, correct?
Well, so there's two treatment plants, the Scituate and this Cohasset. Scituate is impacting the North and South River.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We have requested a dye study a year ago from FDA. So that they have not scheduled it yet, and we don't know when that will happen. They're still in COVID lockdown, and their staff is not allowed to travel. So I don't know when that will get scheduled, and or when they'll start prioritizing the different requests they get throughout the country. We've been told that Scituate is a priority, that they will move it up on the list, but we don't know what that means.
Okay, so that was the confusion, was the two like separating the two. I think that's where the confusion came.
Right. Cohasset, we're not asking for a dye study for that treatment plant. We're going to try to use a model for that.
Because it's so small. Will that take into account things like I mean, I don't know, just, I'm not a scientist, but the treatment facility is in Cohasset Inner Harbor. And so the effluent would have to travel with the current out of Cohasset Channel. And then one would just imagine that gravity would take it out to sea, whereas our farms are going to be kind of up water from that. Will your models be able to take that into consideration?
I'm not a modeler, but my understanding is that this is the standard model that's used throughout the country by hydrographers. So that's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. That was very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have John. John, you can unmute yourself.
This is just a slight comment on the Cohasset in particular. I've been working on a plan to regionalize North Scituate, Cohasset, and Hull. Hull has 1 million gallons a day capacity at their treatment plant that they're not going to use. And we've had several meetings to discuss possible regionalization and the possibility of actually, getting rid of the Cohasset treatment plant. By savings, it's a lot of savings on a larger plant. And the Hull plant is a 3 million gallon a day plant, and the possibility of connecting the Cohasset plant to the Hull plant and also servicing areas of North Scituate, which cannot be serviced by the current Scituate plant because of capacity issues, and they have poor soils there. So it would solve an environmental issue. So that's going on within the towns right now, and Cohasset is kind of has a mixed reaction to giving up their plant for various reasons. So that's out there. So there's a possibility that the Cohasset plant, may be determined in the future. And this is in the near future. This is probably a 5 or 10 year plan. They may shut that plant down. Who knows? Decisions have to be made within the town.
Thanks, John.
Next, we have Scott Soares. Scott, you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Julia. Yeah, thanks for the numbers, Chrissy. Appreciate that. And just, back of the envelope calculation, we're looking at, 33 operations that on average were between $35,000 and $40,000 and on average. So there are some probably much larger and small in that, but so clearly significant impact there for these farms if and when they were able to get into the EU. And as a previous commenter said, you know, shutting the door to any market, especially at this point, following perhaps the worst year that any shellfish grower has and hopefully will ever see in Massachusetts, is something that needs to be addressed. And that's why I apologize. I lost the connection earlier when you were providing the answer, Jeff, but ultimately, you know, we're looking for a way to get back to you, the ISSC, to get them and the plans to recognize that ultimately places like Massachusetts in particular has invested a ton of dough and a ton of man hours, not just including as what you've already done, the division's been doing on getting at great water quality, pump out stations, no discharge zones, et cetera, that it looks like these rules, not only for the wastewater treatment plant discharges, but also for the mooring issue that I know is another pressing matter that is of great concern to the industry, that they didn't recognize at all in any of those rules that came up. And just closing areas based on calculation rather than on the great water quality data that we have that in fact has improved over the years based on all the investments. There needs to be some consideration for that, other than just shutting down, you know, sales opportunities for our shellfish growers. So in short, we're looking for a way to get back to the ISSC, ideally working with the division as one of the state shellfish control agencies that's a signatory, as you mentioned, Jeff, to the NSSP, to get these changes put in place and to work with you to basically get all the work that you've done and the markets that have grown around all that work recognized by the ISSC, so that we don't have, you know, these what seem to be pretty arbitrary, you know, changes to rules that aren't based on any sound water quality data, but based on formulaic calculations around what could happen, precautionary principle, quote unquote, as has been infamously, you know, identified. So I guess in short, we're looking for ways to get back. And I know the ISSC is not coming back around until October of 2022, I expect. But between now and then, we have ample time to work on some proposals. And I'm hopeful that we can work with you, other state shellfish control authorities up and down the coast, the East Coast Shellfish Growers Association, who I know has also been working hard on this, so that we don't start the slippery slope of shutting down, you know, shellfish areas because of the potential threat of contamination, when in fact everything's pointing, it's going the other direction.
Thank you. I don't disagree with you, Scott. I believe and particularly this working with and analyzing the Plymouth wastewater treatment plant, the technology that's available today, and is quite different than when I first started in this program. So the concerns back in 1980 are quite different than today, and our capabilities are amazing. So I would agree with you. I think we need to use more modern assessments of treatment plants than what we developed back in last century.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at, I mean, and you guys know better than I do, you know, the changes in the industry, that nearly $30 million farm gate value. I mean, we're looking at third most valuable landed shellfish species or fishery species, period, in the Commonwealth because of farmed oysters, and places like the Duxbury Kingston Bay complex that are now, you know, they're #1 in the state, where they weren't those many years ago. Other areas in the state were, and it's because of, you know, the water quality opportunity and ingenuity of the growers that have been able to make this all happen. So we don't want to lose, you know, and any traction or backstep at all from all of the great progress that's been made. So really looking for ways to, you know, avoid all of this work that you've had to do, you know, in this short amount of time based on these changes to the NSSP that, you know, I know you guys are required to follow that because it's in the regulation, but we're looking for ways that we can work with you to push back on that so that it recognizes, you know, the great work that's been done in the Commonwealth to get at great clean water quality that's allowed the shellfish industry to grow here.
Thank you. I agree.
Okay, next we have Elaine. Elaine, you can unmute yourself.
I just wanted to thank you for all the information. It's been very informative. And just for clarification, is it a true statement that we're just focusing on oysters, not all shellfish?
These classifications are for all shellfish.
All shellfish?
Yes, all bivalve shellfish. Not when we refer to shellfish, we talk about bivalve molluscan shellfish. So mussels, clams, quahogs, oysters. Generally, bay scallops are exempt from these sanitary considerations if you're just shucking the adductor mussel out. But for all those other bivalves that filter water, that's what it doesn't cover, lobsters or crabs.
And Jeff, if I could just qualify, the stats I gave earlier, they were based just on oysters. So it's an underestimate of the value, because I know there are wild harvest of quahogs that would be impacted by, not being able to go to the European market. So I just want to make sure, I don't think I was clear on that. I just gave you numbers for oysters.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Joseph again. Joseph, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, Jeff, can you roll back to the slide that showed the dye study sampling spots?
I study sampling plots.
Yeah, that one there. All right, so they didn't sample that far into Duxbury Bay. That's what I was curious about.
Those are fixed stations. They had both fixed stations, and then they had a towed array, and so they went all over the 3-bay system, and we looked at their data, and because of the complexities of the wastewater treatment plant and the effluent pipe, typically what they like to do is they like to do a dye release and then follow that over the course of 3, 4, 5 days. And then they can extrapolate that data in something they call a superposition calculation. And they can determine what the steady state value is of that dye or the effluent within a system. Well, there was a problem they ran into because the Plymouth plant is a batch plant. It operates in distinct batches. And so they have anywhere between 4 and 7 batches go out a day. And the effluent pipe that goes from the treatment plant down the hill and out into the water, there are various, it goes up and down throughout the trip. And effluent would get trapped in that effluent pipe. And so not all the dye would be released, even with one batch release. And so, and then you'd get more dye when the second batch was being pumped. So John Hobel explained some of the physics involved there, and calculated that the amount of volume that might be trapped in that effluent pipe, outfall pipe, is around 100,000 gallons. So FDA ran into a problem trying to analyze the data because it wasn't working out the way they had calculated it should. And I believe one of the reasons for that is because of that pipe, because dye was actually stuck in the pipe. So yeah, that we kind of moved on from there and used just a single calculation, the linear regression, to calculate the impacts of one batch release. Long answer for a short question. I apologize.
Yeah.
Could I add something, Jeff?
Sure, Greg.
Joe, those stations were set up by myself and FDA prior to the survey starting. And what each station had was a cage with about 30 or 40 oysters in it with a fluorimeter. So they were basically figuring out where the dye went subsurface and to see if anything from the plant during normal operations got into the oysters, because all the oysters were tested and everything was non-detectable. And the reason that we didn't go further up into Duxbury is we were limited by the number of fluorimeters that we were provided from FDA. So we put them where we thought closer to the outfall pipe that might be affected most. But that's where oysters and fluorimeters were in each one of those stations, and they were analyzed afterwards.
Right. Yeah, I remember that part. Now, the conditionally approved B, is there going to be an MOU for that as well?
Not for that area proper, but
It is subject to closure
but we will have a camp for those smaller mooring areas. CCB 45.5, 0.6, 46.1.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And one last thing, Joe, is that 45.0, we've determined through our work and investigation that is not impacted by a batch release. Only the blue shaded is. So there's no reason to put out an MOU for 45.0 because, and that's why we're keeping it approved, is because it is not adversely affected by the plant unless something catastrophic like a terrorist bomb goes off. But in normal operation, that is not affected by it.
Okay. I guess.
Okay,
Thanks,
next we have
Joe.
Scott Soares. Scott, you can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Julia. Sorry to take so much time. Just clarification. So you've come up with the plan as a response to what FDA's plan was. You've submitted that to them. Is this still pending approval by FDA, or are you going with this and this is it? You're locked in. This is where the classification is, and it's going to be this way for some time into the foreseeable future.
This is our determination. The FDA has been provided it. We have not heard back from them, but this is our determination. This is our classification. If they want to take it further in the ISSC, they will.
So this is not approved by FDA. This could still go to unresolved issues with the FDA ISSC. Is that right?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Not seeing any more hands, Jeff.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate everyone jumping on here at the last minute for a day, but we really wanted to get this information out to you. We wanted to, we didn't want it to be trickling out over the course of a week or 2 weeks. So we did want to get this information out. We just notified FDA of our determination on Friday. And so we wanted to react and let everyone know, particularly since you'd been waiting for months after our original FAQ meeting. So thanks for taking the time. Dan?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Great presentation. So folks, if there's any other questions you could follow up with an email to our Shellfish program, Jeff, or any of the other members, and we'd be happy to give you more details if something comes to mind after this meeting. But I want to thank everybody for a good meeting, very respectful, and just know that we worked as hard as we could to try to surgically manage this area to the as much as we could. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Jeff, since this was recorded,